my name is Claire and I'm one of the master tutors for this semester at the Technique Center, and I wanted to create a video to help students with what to do with their notes after they've taken them. A lot of times students will take all these great notes but then they won't look at them until right before the test, and I know I'm guilty of that all the time. And so I wanted to create a video with tips, techniques to help review your notes, organize them so that when the test does come, they're more helpful and clear with to help students with studying. So first I want to talk about reviewing notes. One of my professors said it's really important to review that day's lecture notes within 24 to 48 hours of the lecture. And so what you need to do is just spend 10 to 15 minutes reading through those lecture notes, kind of remembering what the teacher talked about, what important things were discussed that day, and also can help you if you didn't copy anything down or have any information gaps. That way you can go back to the PowerPoint, rewatch the recorded lecture, use your textbooks to kind of fill in those information gaps. So when the test does come around, your notes are complete to be able to study. It also helps if you have any concepts or terms that were unclear or confusing to you, then you can again utilize those same resources, or you email your teacher, use a tutoring service to kind of help clarify those concepts. So that way you're not waiting until right before the test to try to remember something from a couple weeks back, and it's more clarified at the beginning of the unit than waiting till the end where it's not as fresh in your head. So that way you can have more understanding and your studying can be more successful and helpful so that you can do better on your test. It's also important that you don't ignore those misunderstandings, because they're not going to go away. They're still going to be there when the test goes around. They might even show up on your test. So making sure to clarify those misunderstandings or those confusing concepts early on is a really great technique to do. So throughout this video, I'm also going to give you some tips and techniques for organizing your notes to help when you get to the studying process for your notes to be more clear on really what to study. So next I'm going to talk about highlighting, underlining, and color coding notes. So a good thing to do when taking notes is to color code them. I, for example, color code each of my classes. So this class was a business law class I took, and so I had this class be this dark green color, and so I took all my notes in that dark green color, and so that I would associate that color with this class, and I'd make all my note cards and study guides in this color to kind of keep reiterating that color. To remember important terms and concepts. I also made sure, like when I was studying, all my titles are written in that dark green color, kind of stands out against the black pen, and I also made sure to write my key terms in that color too. And then if my teacher said anything important in class, I made sure to star it because I knew it might come up on a test. So when I'm reviewing through my notes, I can remember, oh, these type of gifts are really important. I need to make sure I remember them for when I'm studying and to make note cards for them, so that for when the test comes around, I am prepared. However, not everyone takes their notes in colors or kind of color coordinates their classes, and that's okay. What you can do is, if you're reviewing your notes and they're all in the same color, you can use a highlighter, for example, and kind of highlight those important terms and concepts. So reading this, the first thing it says is, what is property? Well, I know that sentence after it is going to be the definition. So I'm going to highlight property, so I know that is an important term. And then I can go down and highlight those two types, intangible property and intangible property. Because now going back when I study, I see things that are highlighted and more clear to me of what I need to study and what I need to know. Those kind of terms pop off the page. So some other tips to help make your notes kind of stand out when you're reviewing them. Instead of using the highlighter, because if you feel like you're not sure what to highlight, you're just going to highlight everything, is you can use a pen and you can kind of underline or box or circle important concepts or terms. So I would underline the concept of property. I'd also highlight, I could box tangible property and intangible property. And so those are terms that stand out to me, and so that way when I study them, I can clearly see property, and these two types are very important for when I'm studying. I need to make sure that I know those terms for the test. Now, say for example, your teacher doesn't really put section titles or just kind of lectures with no PowerPoint, so your notes are just kind of all over the place and you don't really know how to distinguish them. How do you kind of make that more clear for you for when you're studying? And so a good thing to do is to rewrite your notes. That's a great way to review your notes and really make sure that you're kind of going over that information, relearning it, remembering it. But it's also a good way because like in class you might be writing so fast and have so many different notes, to be able to kind of reorganize it, make it a little neater, more clear for you to understand. So these are an example of microbiology notes I took about the carbon and nitrogen cycles, and they're just kind of all over the place. You know, I'm not really sure exactly what's what and kind of where it goes. We start talking about the Calvin-Benson cycle and then go to the nitrogen cycle, but it's just all kind of in one area, and it's not very clear for me to read and study. So what I did is when I rewrote my notes, I kind of sectioned them off. So I know exactly this section and this couple of bullet points is talking about the Calvin-Benson cycle and all the information I need to know for that. And then these bullet points are talking about the nitrogen cycle. It's much more clear for me to read. We got some terms that stand out because I kind of color-coded it. And so it's just more clear, easier for me to read, better for me to study, so I am more prepared for my exam. Now say, for example, in another scenario, you have a bunch of information and bullet points kind of distinguishing between two different terms, and it's just a bunch of words and a bunch of similarities and differences, and you're not really sure how to understand this information. A good thing to do is kind of make graphics or diagrams or images to kind of help make that information easier to digest, easier to visualize. So for example, in this scenario, we're talking about mammals and fish and kind of the differences and similarities between them. So these are kind of my notes from class, and it's just a bunch of bullet points, not as clear. But when I was reviewing through my notes, I went through and kind of sorted that information and kind of redid it into a Venn diagram. And so it's much easier to distinguish. I know what mammals have, what fish have, and kind of the similarities between them too. So kind of going through and maybe drawing those diagrams and charts can kind of help you visualize that information better when you're studying. Lastly, my last tip for reviewing your notes and organizing them is to make study tools for when you're studying. So making flashcards, using Quizlet, making those study guides, key term lists are great ways to kind of help you when you're studying. And like organizing your notes, you can clearly point out from those highlights or underlines or color-coded sections what's important and kind of what you need to do. And I always make sure that whenever teachers repeat terms or concepts, put like a star or a dash or a circle, something that I know that this is really important and I need to make sure to study it for the test. But thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for another video on how to what to do with online notes.